Hello and welcome to Gardening at 58 North. So in this video I'd like to give you guys an update on my grafted bonsai here, and in this video I'm going to be going ahead and starting to wire in the branches. So as you can see, there's been a huge amount of growth. In the last update I just had that small shoot coming up. I'd cut off one of the main shoots, then train it in from lower down. It's resprouted and I cut the top off. That encouraged all these side branches to come out. And I'll show you a time lapse now of how that looked as it grew. So taking off the top of that stem basically allowed all the dormant side buds to grow, and that's what's happened now. And we've got a huge amount of branches that have all branched out. And as you can see, they have kind of grown over a bit too much, so I need to do some pruning today as well. I had hoped that I would have pruned this a bit earlier and wired it in earlier, but it's quite difficult with this hybrid willow. It grows so quickly that if I'm busy for a week or two, all of a sudden it's grown a huge amount and it's almost too late for me to do the work. But I'm going to go ahead now anyway and carry out some pruning and also some wiring. So looking at this, you can see lots of growth has come up, and it's a bit uneven as well. Some branches are thicker than others. We might have to do some hard cutbacks on some of them potentially to try and weaken them and get them to resprout again, to retrain them in if they are too thick, but we'll see how it is as we go along. So I'm just going to pan down now and show you the base where it's all resprouting from. So you can see this bit here. This bit is really low down. I don't think we need any of these shoots, so I'm going to completely remove them. It will also make it a little bit easier for me to see the branch structure and see what needs to be done. And it's the same with this one on the left as well. So now we're just left with that main branch and then lots of side branches coming off of it, and that's how I'm wanting it to look. So what I need to do now is start to train these into a better position. So what I'll be using is bonsai wire. I'm just going to wrap this around the stems, and I'll use this to support and train the stems into the positions that I want. Now you do have to be quite careful with bonsai wire. I'm always quite bad for forgetting about it and letting it dig into the plant. I'll need to make sure I regularly check up on this plant and take off any wires that are starting to dig into it. So I'm just going to go ahead now. I'm going to start wiring some of these branches in using this bonsai wire. Some of these lower ones, what I'm hoping to do is pull them down and have them come out all at different angles. Some of these are quite thick, so I'll have to use some slightly thicker gauge wire for those ones. And then we want to have one main leader, which at the moment looks like this one here. But you can see the main leader is actually quite a weak shoot at the moment. But when I lower down these longer, stronger shoots, what will happen is this weaker shoot will become more dominant, and it should grow faster and become a dominant shoot again. So to wire it in, what I need to do is I need to start at the base and make sure I wrap it around a more solid part of the tree to make sure that it's secure, and then I can start wrapping it around the branches. So I have to be very careful that I don't damage the branch. So as I'm doing this, I'm supporting the branch as I'm wrapping it around to make sure it's not damaged. I have to do it fairly tightly so that the branch is well supported. But I do have to make sure that because it's quite tight, I have to regularly check this and make sure it's not starting to dig in. So that's it now wrapped around. I can then position this into a position that I would think would look nice. And then I can go ahead and start on another branch. So this one here, for example, is quite a bit thicker, so I think I need some slightly thicker gauge wire for that one. So I'm just going to go ahead, a similar process for each one. I'm just going to secure the base of the wires, let's say, at a more solid part of the stem to make sure that these wires are well secured. And then I'm just going to work my way up, wiring in all these branches into the angle and position that I'd like them to be in. So that's now fully wired in. What I've done is, when looking down from above, I've spaced out the branches all equally so that they all come out and fill the nice spaces around the plant, around the main stem. And what I've done is I've pushed them down a little bit lower than what I probably want them to be finally, because when I take the wire off, they'll probably spring up slightly, and as they grow over time as well, they'll also spring up a little bit as well. So I'll probably retweak some of these, get a slightly better angle on some of them as they grow and develop. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to cut off the tips of the longest and strongest shoots. So that would be one at the very back, this one here, and the one on the far left. The reason being, these are very strong shoots, and there's going to be a lot of energy going through them, and these, even though they'll be weakened by pointing down, this one at the top might still struggle a bit to grow well with other ones being so strong. Also, we got some other ones here that are very weak, and this one is going to be pointing down as well, so that'll be weakened with it pointing down, so trimming these will help that to get a bit more energy and growth. Also, it should encourage lots of back budding on these dormant buds, and so hopefully what we'll get is lots of side shoots starting to come off, and then from those side shoots I can train them into whatever positions I want. Now, with this being a very fast growing tree, I do have to be very careful how long I keep these wires on for. Probably not much more than a month, because they'll start to dig in or cause issues. But we only really have about a month or two left of the growing season, so this should hopefully be fine until autumn comes. What I'll do is I'll give this a feed, because I haven't been trying to keep it too vigorous because it's such a vigorous plant already. It's been growing too vigorously and it makes it harder to train in. But now I'm wanting to have a lot more smaller branches. I'm not too worried if I give it a bit more of a feed and a bit more vigor, because it's going to be distributing all those new shoots over a big area. Where it's just got one or two shoots growing, then I really have to be careful not to give it too much feed and too much vigor. But when it's got lots of shoots growing, because it's sharing the growth over lots of different shoots, there'll be lots of smaller, weaker shoots, so I'm not too worried about feeding it at this stage. So I'll just go ahead now and cut the tips off the longer, stronger branches, and then I'll see you in a few weeks or a month or two's time, and we'll see how the tree's looking. So it's now several months later, and as you can see, it's currently dormant because it's winter. Spring is just around the corner though, and the buds are just starting to fatten up, but this is the great time to show you the general branch structure. It does look a little bit like a messy spider at the moment, but I'm hoping once it branches out and we get the new structure in properly, it will look a lot nicer as a weeping kind of plant. So basically at the end of last summer, I had these bent down. I kept cutting off any regrowth. You can see there was a bit of regrowth at the bottom of some of these, and I shortened the longest ones. And I didn't put on a huge amount of growth because it was towards the end of the summer, and most trees tend to put all their growth on at the beginning of the summer or late springtime. So it's just kind of kept that shape, but it has thickened up the stems slightly. Not much thickening on the trunks yet, but I'll expect a lot more thickening late in this year. What's going to happen now is spring will come soon, and this will burst leaves out of all these little buds along the whole length of the stem. So it should send out lots of little small branches as well. And because I've angled these down, the highest point of the branch is where the hormones are going to be collecting, and that's where it's going to be putting on the growth, and these lower sections of the stem are going to be suppressed. Last summer the growth was still coming out the ends because it was used to growing upright, but now that I've bent them down, the growth should start coming more evenly along the whole branch, but maybe more particularly at the highest points. So what I'll do now is I'll end the video here. That's the update for now. I will give you an update in a few months' time when it comes into its spring growth. We should have lots of new branches coming out which can be trained in, and we'll think about what we're going to do with the top half here and how we're going to train that in further. So that's all for this update on the grafted willow. I'll see you guys in a few months' time, as I say, when this comes back to life, and we'll see how much growth it puts on in the early part of this summer.